Every year new Christmas stories are written. In the past 100 years, the total must be several thousand or more. Most were forgotten after the first reading. Others enjoyed a brief flare of popularity for a few years and were lost to time. But very few really exceptional stories have endured and very likely will continue to be with us for another 100 years or more. Such as the Santa Claus story, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the legend of Why the Chimes Rang, and several others. And of course, the first story of Christmas, the story of the Nativity, the beautiful story of how Christ came to be born in a relatively small village in a faraway country over 2,000 years ago. The story of how wise men came from the east bearing valuable gifts for the baby Jesus, destined to be the Savior. It was this part of the Nativity story that gave us the wonderful custom of exchanging gifts at Christmas, a custom we all enjoy because of the love giving and receiving expresses. It is just this thought that inspired the imagination of one of America's most popular short story writers at the turn of the century. He wrote hundreds of stories, most of which had surprise endings. He entertained people because he knew people. He knew how they really were and how they really acted and reacted. But even his many popular short stories are forgotten today. Almost all of them except perhaps one, which seems to live on and on. The Gift of the Magi. From the title you might think it's a religious story, but it's not, except for its message of true love. But decide for yourself. May I present O. Henry's classic, The Gift of the Magi.
$1.87. That was all, and 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved one and two at a time by bulldozing the grocer, the vegetable man, and the butcher until one's cheeks burned with the silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. 3 times she counted it, $1.87, and the next day would be Christmas.
The Dillingham Young had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, the letters of Dillingham Young looked blurred, as though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming deed. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim, and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Della.
She stood at the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking a gray fence in a gray backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She had been saving every penny she could for months with this result. $20 a week doesn't go far. The expenses had been greater than she calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning something nice for him. Something fine and rare and sterling. Something just a little bit near to being worthy the honor of being Jim's wife. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you've seen a pier glass in an $8 flat. A very thin and very agile person may, by observing the reflection in a rapid series of longitudinal strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of oneself's looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length.
Now there were 2 possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair.
So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. And then she did it up again nervously and quickly. Once she faltered for a moment and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn carpet. On went her old jacket, on went her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts, and with the brilliant sparkle still in her eyes, she fluttered out the door and down the stairs to the street.
Will you buy my hair?
I buy hair. Take your hat off and let's have a side of the looks of it. $20, that's it.
That's it, quick.
And the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She She found it at last. It had surely been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the stores, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum fob chain, simple and chaste in design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone, and not by flashy ornamentation, as all good things should do. It was even worthy of the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew it must be Jim's. It was like him. Quietness and value, the description applied to both. $21 they took from her, and she hurried home with the 87 cents. After she looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully, and critically, she said to herself,
If Jim doesn't kill me before he takes a look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? What could I do with just $1? $1.87.
At 7 o'clock the coffee was made, and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the chop. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the couch near the door that he always entered. Then she heard a step on the stair down on the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit of first saying little silent prayers about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered,
Please God, make him think I'm still pretty.
The door opened and Jim stepped in. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22, and to be burdened with a wife. He needed a new overcoat, and he was without gloves.
He stood as immovable as a setter at the scent of a quail. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments she had prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with that peculiar expression on his face. Della wriggled off the table and went for him.
Darling, don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it, because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow out again. You won't mind, will you? Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a nice, beautiful gift I got for you.
Did you say your hair is gone?
It's gone. You needn't look for it. It's Christmas Eve, Jim. Maybe the hair on my head was numbered, but no one could ever count my love for you, Jim.
Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to awake. He enfolded his Della. For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny some inconsequential objects so as not to intrude on their privacy. $8 a week or $1 million a year. What is the difference? A mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it on the table.
Don't make any mistake about me, Bill. I don't think there's anything in a way of haircut, or a shave, or a shampoo that could make me love my girl any less. But if you unwrap this package, you may see where I acted as I just did.
And then, alas, a quick feminine change to hysterical tears and wails, necessitating the immediate employment of all comforting powers of the Lord of the Flat.
For there lay the combs. The set of combs, side by side, that Della had worshipped for a long time in the Broadway shop window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoise shell with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in the beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers, but the tresses that should have adorned the coveted adornments were gone.
Oh, my hair grows so fast, Jim. Wait, you haven't seen your present for me yet, Jim. Isn't it a dandy? I hunted all over town to find it. Now, you have to check your time at least 100 times a day now. Let me see your watch so I can see how it looks with it.
You know what? I had a great idea.
What, Jim?
Well, is that we put a Christmas presents away and keep them a while? They are too nice to use just now. You see, Dale, I sold my watch to get the money to buy your comms. And now, suppose we get busy and get our dinner started.
The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication.
And here we have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish young lovers in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, these were the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are the wisest.
Everywhere they are wisest. They are the magi.
Bye-bye.
I'm still me without my hair.
I think that was my dad honking. Okay. I'm gonna go call him and be like, give me a minute.
Let's take your hat off and laugh.